In the middle of a cold, stormy night, a lonely veteran crossed paths with a frightened little girl and her puppy, an encounter that would change all their lives forever. What began as a moment of kindness turned into a story of courage, healing, and the unexpected power of family. Stay with this story until the end, because hidden in the rain is a miracle worth witnessing. If this moment touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. And before you go, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story of love and resilience can travel. The rain hammered the lonely forest road like a relentless drum, the kind of downpour that blurred the world into a sheet of trembling silver. Liam Rowan, a 50-year-old veteran with a broad, weather-beaten frame and eyes carrying the dull shine of old battles, drove slowly through the storm. His salt-and-iron beard clung wetly to his jaw, and the lines etched across his face had been carved over decades of war, sleepless nights, and memories he wished he could bury beneath the soil of time. Though his hands were steady on the steering wheel, a heaviness pressed on his chest, a familiar pressure he had lived with since Afghanistan, where an explosion had taken the lives of 2 men who trusted him. That guilt shaped the way he breathed, the way he lived, the way he hesitated before closing his eyes each night. As his headlights cut through sheets of rain, Liam noticed a small silhouette stumbling along the roadside. It was so slight, so fragile, he almost missed it, just a shadow curled against the storm's cruelty. He slowed the truck, wiping condensation from the inside of the windshield with the back of his hand. Then he saw her, a little girl, maybe 8 or 9, soaked through, her long dark hair plastered to her face and neck, her thin clothing clinging to her small frame like a second trembling skin. The bruises on her bare arms were unmistakable, dark and uneven like fingerprints of cruelty left behind. She held tightly to a tiny German shepherd puppy, no more than 3 months old. The pup's fur was soaked flat against its body, but its ears, too big for its head as with all young shepherds, were pinned back in fear. Its small chest shuddered with every breath, yet it stayed pressed against the girl protectively. The girl held him as if he were the last warm thing she owned in the world. Liam stepped out into the rain. It hit him like icy nails driving into his skin, but he barely noticed. His boots splashed into muddy water as he approached the girl slowly, hands raised in a gesture meant to soothe. "Hey," he said, his voice naturally low and gravelly, softened now by concern. "You okay, sweetheart?" The girl flinched as if expecting a blow. Her eyes were wide, large, round, and filled not with fear alone but with a kind of exhausted acceptance, like someone too used to pain. She was small and slender, her face thin, her lips pale from cold. "I'm Emma," she whispered, her teeth chattering, and this is Max." Liam's gaze shifted to the puppy. Max let out a weak whine, tail tucked tightly between his hind legs, his tiny paws muddy. Yet when Liam took another step closer, the puppy still growled, not viciously, but with shaky determination, as if saying, "Don't touch her. She's mine to protect." A fragile guardian trying to stand between the world and a girl who had no one else. Liam crouched slowly despite his knees protesting from old injuries. "It's all right, Max," he murmured. "No one's gonna hurt her." Emma swallowed hard. Rainwater streaked down her face, mixing with tears she didn't bother hiding anymore. "My stepmother, Olivia, she said she'd throw Max into the woods tonight because he eats too much. And her boyfriend, he hits me when she's not looking. They said I should be grateful." Liam felt something old and dark twist inside him, the kind of twist that came from years of seeing people hurt the innocent and walking away without punishment. He fought the surge of memory, the screaming, the night raids, the cries he couldn't silence even now. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, the forest dimmed into a battlefield in his mind. But when Emma winced at the thunder and Max whimpered, the vision snapped apart. "This isn't right," Liam said under his breath. He extended his hand, palm up, steady and warm despite the cold rain. "Emma, look at me," he said gently. "You're safe now. I promise you." Emma hesitated. A long, trembling moment. The storm raged, but her breathing was the loudest thing Liam heard. Finally she nodded, the smallest, most fragile surrender. Liam stood and opened the truck door. Warm air rushed out. "Get inside," he said softly. "Both of you." Emma stepped toward him, clutching Max tight. Max shook water from his fur, then buried his head into Emma's chest as Liam helped her climb in. Liam closed the passenger door and took one last look at the empty road through the curtain of rain, a road that had brought them together not by chance, but perhaps by fate. As he slid into the driver's seat, Emma whispered, "Thank you." Liam glanced at her in the dim light. "You're safe now," he repeated. "No one will hurt you on my watch." The storm outside raged on, but inside the truck the first fragile spark of a new beginning flickered, one born from pain, from fear, and from the simple act of stopping for someone who needed help. What Liam didn't know yet was that this moment, under this storm, would forever change the direction of 3 lives: his, Emma's, and the small brave puppy trembling in her arms. The wipers beat back the relentless rain as Liam guided the truck through the winding forest road. The heater hummed softly, pushing warm air into the cabin where Emma sat curled in the passenger seat, still clutching Max against her chest. The little German shepherd pup, no more than 3 months old, had finally stopped trembling. His fur was drying into fluffy tufts, and his eyes, dark, marble-like, and always searching, kept darting between Emma and Liam with cautious alertness. He was small, but carried that instinctive courage shepherds were born with, even if fear still wrapped around him like the storm outside. Emma's breathing was uneven, shallow, her thin shoulders rising and falling too quickly. Liam kept his eyes forward but angled slightly toward her, watching from the corner of his vision. The gentle glow of the dashboard highlighted the bruises on her arms, some yellowing with age, some fresh and purple. He tightened his grip on the wheel. The truck creaked with each turn, but the anger in his chest stayed rigid and unmoving. "Emma," he said softly, not wanting to startle her, "you can tell me whatever you're comfortable with. I'm listening." For a moment, the only sound was the rain. Then Emma wiped her nose with the back of her sleeve, an oversized pink sweater too thin for the weather. Her voice emerged as a fragile whisper. "My dad. He was a soldier. He used to tell me stories every night. He said brave people aren't the ones who fight. They're the ones who protect." She swallowed, her throat bobbing painfully. "He died last year." Liam's heart clenched. He had lost more brothers than he could count, but children losing parents, that was a wound he never learned to look at without breaking a little inside. Emma continued, each word like a cracked tile falling loose. "After he died, I had to live with Olivia. She's tall, very thin, always dressed like she wants people to think she's rich." Emma frowned as if trying to remember details that were painful to touch. "She dyes her hair this bright gold, but not the nice kind. It's like yellow straw, and she smells like the perfume she sprays everywhere, even on me sometimes, to cover my bruises." Liam exhaled slowly, jaw flexing. Olivia was starting to form in his mind. A brittle woman made of vanity, cruelty, and the sharp scent of cheap perfume. "She wasn't like that when Dad was alive," Emma said, voice cracking. "She pretended to care. She cooked dinner, brushed my hair, but when the money came, everything changed." Liam recalled too many widows and step-parents who had snapped under the weight of greed. War stole lives, but what followed often destroyed the rest. "She met someone," Emma whispered. "His name is Cole." Liam frowned. "Who is he?" Emma's grip on Max tightened. He's big, taller than you, bald. He has this scar under his eye." She traced a finger along her cheek to show the shape. "He used to work at a garage. Olivia said he had anger issues, but she still let him live with us. A man with a quick temper, a scarred face, and weak boundaries, Liam could imagine him easily, the type who enjoyed being feared because it was the only power he had. Cole had left a mark on Emma's soul long before the visible marks on her skin. "He calls me names," Emma whispered. "Says I'm a burden. Says my dad shouldn't have wasted money having me." Tears slid silently down her cheeks. "And Olivia never stops him. Sometimes she hits me, too," she added plainly, too plainly, like it was simply the weather report. Max let out a soft whine and licked her hand. "And Max, he tries to protect me." She smiled weakly, looking down at the small pup pressed against her. "He growls at them, even when he's scared. But today, Cole got mad. He said he'd take Max and get rid of him because he eats too much. He grabbed him and put him in a box. And I grabbed him back and ran." Liam felt something hot flare in his chest, a flash of memory. A boy in Afghanistan, clutching a dog while running from gunfire. The boy hadn't made it. Liam had spent years telling himself he should have run faster. PTSD prickled at the edges of his vision, a tightening, a threat of soundless explosions. But he forced a deep breath, grounding himself in the present. The hum of the truck, the smell of rain-soaked soil, the fragile voice beside him. "You did the right thing," Liam said, voice low but steady. "You were brave." "No," Emma said quickly. "Dad was brave. I'm just—" She hesitated. "I'm just someone they didn't want." Liam finally turned his head to face her fully. "No one unwanted runs into a storm just to save someone smaller than them. That's courage, Emma." Her lower lip trembled. "But they told me I'm nothing." Liam shook his head. "People who hurt others say that, because they want you to believe it. But it's never true." Emma looked at him like she wanted to believe, like she had never been given permission to believe before. "Listen to me," Liam said quietly, almost a whisper. "You're safe now. I won't let anyone hurt you. Not Olivia, not Cole, not anyone." Emma blinked, tears mixing with the last streaks of rainwater on her face. Max curled closer to her, letting out a small huff as if agreeing. Outside, the rain began to ease, thinning into a light drizzle. Liam kept driving, the road now winding toward the warm, distant glow of his cabin. For the first time in years, something inside him felt different. A shift, a quiet awakening. Protecting Emma wasn't a burden. It was a promise. One he intended to keep. And Emma, leaning her head gently against the window, finally whispered the words that settled deep in Liam's heart. "Thank you for stopping." He didn't respond. He didn't need to, because in that moment, he knew this night wasn't an accident. It was a turning point. The storm had brought Emma and Max to him, and he wasn't going to let the world steal them away. The rain had thinned into a soft mist by the time Liam turned onto the narrow dirt road leading to his cabin. The truck's headlights illuminated tall pines lining the path, their needles glistening like tiny shards of glass. Emma watched the trees pass by with wide, uncertain eyes, her fingers still curled protectively around Max. The pup had finally relaxed enough to rest his chin on her arm, though his ears twitched at every sudden noise. Liam noticed it all, every flinch, every tiny movement, as he drove. His mind churned with the weight of what he had just learned, but he forced himself to breathe steadily. The child beside him needed calm, not a man lost in his own ghosts. The cabin emerged slowly from the shadows, warm light spilling from the windows. It was modest in size, made of aged cedar that darkened beautifully with time. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, carrying the faint scent of burning pine. To Emma, it looked like something from a storybook, too gentle to be real. Liam parked near the porch and cut the engine. He turned to Emma. "My wife is home," he said softly. "Her name's Helen. She's kind, very kind." Emma nodded but shrank into the seat slightly, fingers tightening around the puppy as if bracing for judgment. Liam stepped out, rounded the truck, and opened Emma's door. She hesitated again. Max whimpered and nudged her cheek, as if urging her forward. Finally, she let Liam help her down. Her shoes sank slightly into the damp earth, and she shivered in the cold evening air. The front door opened before they reached it. Helen Rowan stood framed in the warm glow of the cabin light. She was a woman in her late 40s, average height with soft features shaped by years of tending the wounded. Her dark brown hair, streaked with early silver, was tied loosely at the back. Her eyes were gentle, hazel, warm, the kind that absorbed pain rather than reflected it. She had the posture of someone who had spent decades leaning over hospital beds. But there was a natural steadiness to her, the quiet power of a woman who had spent her life holding others together. Her gaze moved from Liam to Emma, then to Max. In that split second, confusion, concern, and maternal instinct all flickered across her expression. "Liam, what happened?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with urgency. "Inside," Liam replied softly. Helen stepped aside. The moment Emma crossed the threshold, warmth enveloped her, a kind of warmth she couldn't remember feeling at home. The cabin smelled faintly of baked bread and pine resin. A handmade quilt lay draped over the couch, and framed photos lined the mantel. Liam in uniform shaking hands with fellow soldiers, Helen in military medical scrubs, both of them younger, smiling, holding on to a promise of a future they later learned was impossible. Helen closed the door gently. "Sweetheart," she said to Emma, bending down slowly, making sure her movements were visible and soft. "You're soaked. Let me get a towel." Emma nodded, though her shoulders hunched as if expecting otherwise. Max, too, pressed himself between Emma's feet, growling under his breath, not aggressively, but protectively. Helen returned with a stack of towels and a bowl of warm water. She crouched beside Emma, moving with the deliberate care of someone who knew the value of gentleness. "May I?" she asked, raising the towel. Emma froze. Her breath grew shallow. She flinched before the towel even touched her skin. Liam's heart twisted painfully. He had seen that same reaction. Children in war zones, recoiling at every raised hand, every sudden movement. But seeing it here, in his own home, carved into the body of a girl who had never set foot on a battlefield, it broke something in him. "It's okay," Liam whispered from behind. "Helen won't hurt you." Helen's eyes softened even more, if that were possible. "You can tell me if anything makes you uncomfortable," she said gently. Emma's breathing steadied just a little. After a moment of hesitation, she lifted her arm slightly. Permission enough. Helen dabbed the towel along Emma's arms, wiping away rainwater and mud. As the fabric revealed more of the child's skin, Helen's expression shifted. Bruises, old, new, some in the shape of fingers. Helen looked up at Liam, a silent question hanging in her eyes. Liam answered with a small shake of his head. Later, he would tell her everything. When Helen moved the towel toward Max, the puppy backed away at first. His tail tucked between his legs, but his eyes stayed focused on Emma, ready to intervene. "It's okay, little one," Helen murmured. She angled the towel to catch his scent before slowly approaching again. This time, Max allowed her to dry him, though he kept glancing at Emma for reassurance. Emma's stomach growled faintly. The sound made her cheeks burn. Helen pretended not to notice the embarrassment. "I'll warm up some soup," she said. "Your hands must be freezing." Emma's voice trembled. I don't want to be in trouble." Helen paused mid-step. "Trouble? For eating?" Emma nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. Helen looked at Liam and he saw anger, the quiet, sharp kind reserved for cruelty inflicted on the defenseless. "You're not in trouble," Helen said softly. "You're hungry, and you deserve to eat." Emma blinked, disbelief flickering across her face. Later that night, After dinner, and after Emma finally fell asleep curled on the couch with Max nestled against her stomach, Liam entered the kitchen. Helen stood at the sink, hands braced against the countertop, her shoulders shaking slightly. "We can't send her back, Liam," she whispered, voice thick. "No child flinches like that, unless they've been hurt for a very long time." Liam stepped beside her, placing a calloused hand over hers. "I know," he said. "I told her she's safe now." Helen turned to him, eyes wet yet burning with fierce determination. "Then we make sure she stays safe, whatever it takes." In the quiet cabin, surrounded by the soft crackle of the fireplace, a decision was made. Without fanfare, without hesitation. A fragile new life had entered their home, and neither of them would let darkness take her back. The next morning arrived wrapped in a thin layer of fog that clung to the pine trees like breath held too long. Inside the cabin, the smell of scrambled eggs and toasted bread drifted from the kitchen where Helen moved quietly, careful not to disturb Emma, who was still curled on the couch with Max nestled under her chin. The girl's thin hands rested on the puppy's back, rising and falling with each soft breath. Liam stood by the window, sipping black coffee. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw bruises on Emma's arms, and behind them, the shadows of children he couldn't save a lifetime ago. The cabin felt warm, safe, too fragile a safety perhaps. Liam tried to push that thought away. Today was supposed to be simple. Call a friend at the sheriff's office, ask for guidance, figure out legal steps. But fate rarely cared about good intentions. The peace shattered with a violent bang. Then another. The front door rattled against its hinges. Helen froze, spatula in hand. Liam's mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The echo of ceramic felt too much like exploding shells. More pounding. "Open this damn door!" a sharp voice screamed, shrill, furious. Emma jolted awake, eyes wide with terror. Max jumped to his feet, barking in frantic bursts, ears pinned back but brave as ever. Another voice followed, much deeper, rough, carrying the weight of someone who believed fear equaled power. "We know she's in there." Liam felt his breath seize. The pounding of fists on the door morphed in his mind into the pounding of artillery. The dim morning light seemed to flare white, then red, then dissolve into dust and desert wind. He smelled smoke, heard screaming, felt heat on his face. His fingers twitched, instinctively searching for a weapon that wasn't there. PTSD gripped him like a vice. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His heart raced painfully fast, his pulse roaring in his ears like a helicopter blade. The cabin walls closed in, shrinking. In the corner of his vision, Emma clung to Helen, trembling, whispering something he couldn't understand through the haze. Then, Max barked. A sharp, commanding sound, a sound that sliced through the fog in his mind like a flare in a battlefield night. Liam blinked hard. The room snapped back into focus. He saw Emma crying. He saw Helen shielding her. He saw his own hand shaking uncontrollably. And he saw the door. Without thinking, he stepped forward. Helen reached for him, fear in her eyes. "Liam." "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here." He reached the door just as another pounding strike shook it. Liam flung it open. On the porch stood Olivia and her boyfriend, Cole. Olivia looked even harsher in daylight. A tall, thin woman with sharp cheekbones, skin stretched tight over her face, and bleached yellow-blonde hair matted by humidity. She wore a fur-trimmed jacket far too glamorous for the muddy. Woods and streaks of mascara had run beneath her eyes, making her look both furious and unhinged. Cole stood just behind her. He was large, over 6 feet, with a thick neck, a square jaw overshadowed by rough stubble, and a faded scar slicing beneath his left eye. His leather jacket hung heavy on his broad shoulders, and the smell of stale cigarettes clung to him like a second skin. His eyes held the cold glint of someone who enjoyed having others fear him. Liam had met men like him before, men who mistook intimidation for strength because they had never learned anything else. "Where is she?" Olivia demanded, shoving past Liam, though the push barely moved him. "Emma, you get out here right now." Helen's voice cut through the air. "Stay away from her." Cole sneered. "Lady, stay out of this. She's our responsibility." "She's not your anything," Helen snapped. "Not after what you two did." Olivia's face contorted. "She's my stepdaughter." "And she's covered in bruises," Helen shot back. "We saw them." Cole stepped forward, jabbing a finger at Liam's chest. "Hand her over, old man. We'll pretend this never happened." Max lunged, barking fiercely. Emma shrank back behind Helen. Liam's expression darkened, not with fear, but with the cold, deadly clarity of a man who had faced far worse than 2 bullies at his door. "You're not taking her." Olivia stepped forward, reaching past Liam as if to grab Emma. "Come here, Emma." Liam moved. He blocked her arm with a swift, controlled motion, a reflex honed from years of combat drills. "Don't touch her." Cole roared and charged at him. But Liam, despite age and scars, was still fast. He caught Cole's arm, twisted sharply, and shoved him back. Cole stumbled down the porch steps, landing in the wet dirt with a harsh grunt. "You broke my damn arm," he bellowed. "I didn't," Liam said calmly. "But I can." Olivia screamed insults, but before she could lunge again, the sound of sirens echoed through the trees. A sheriff's truck rolled into view, tires crunching over gravel. Deputy Mark Jensen stepped out. He was a stocky man in his 40s with sandy hair, a sun-reddened face, and a steady, level-headed calm. He had once served as military police, and he recognized the look in Liam's eyes instantly. Trauma wrestling with control. Mark approached slowly. "Morning, Liam. Got a call about a disturbance." Olivia rushed to him, pointing wildly. "They kidnapped my stepdaughter." Mark's eyes flicked to Emma's bruises, to Max trembling, to Helen shielding the girl, then to Liam, standing rigid but protective. "Everyone inside," Mark instructed. He turned to Olivia and Cole. "You two stay where you are." Olivia protested, shrieked, threatened, but Mark ignored her. He questioned Emma gently, examined the bruises, and listened to Helen's account. His expression grew darker with each detail. Finally, he straightened. "Emma stays here for now. You," he said, pointing at Olivia, "are under investigation for child endangerment and assault." Cole scoffed. "You can't." Mark turned his gaze on him. "And you're staying for questioning. Don't make this harder." As Mark led the furious pair toward his truck, Emma threw her arms around Helen, sobbing into her sweater. Helen held her close, stroking her hair. "You're safe," she whispered. "You're safe now." Liam watched from the porch, chest rising with a slow, shaky breath. Relief washed through him, followed by something deeper, quieter. He had not failed this time. He had not let the past repeat itself. Soft sunlight filtered through the pine branches that surrounded the Rowan cabin, scattering warm golden patches across the porch, the walls, the wooden floor inside. The storm of the previous days had passed, leaving behind the smell of wet earth and the hush of a forest recovering from turmoil. Inside the cabin, a quieter transformation had begun, one far more delicate than any change the weather could bring. Emma awoke earlier than usual, her hair a gentle tangle against the pillow, Max curled faithfully against her side like a furry sentinel. The pup was growing into his paws, still clumsy but ever watchful, his ears twitching at every noise. He lifted his head as she stirred, licking her cheek in small, comforting strokes. She smiled, a shy, hesitant thing that barely lifted her lips, but it was the first morning smile Helen had witnessed from her. The kitchen bustled with gentle activity. Helen, still in her faded blue house robe, hair tied in a soft bun, was preparing dough. Flour dusted her hands and the tip of her nose, giving her an almost angelic appearance. When she noticed Emma hovering near the doorway, she smiled and waved her over. "Good morning, sweetheart. Come help me?" Emma stepped forward timidly. Her small fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, a nervous habit that showed up whenever she wasn't sure of the rules. Helen knelt slightly to reach Emma's height, brushing a loose strand of hair behind the girl's ear. Not quickly, not abruptly, but with the slow tenderness of someone who knew how easily trust could shatter. "No rush," Helen murmured. "Just come whenever you're ready." A pause. Then Emma nodded. That tiny gesture warmed the room more than the rising oven heat. Liam slipped in from the back door soon after, boots still damp from chopping morning firewood. His rugged face, lined by years of service and shadows of battle, softened when he saw Emma covered in flour up to her elbows. "Looks like someone is becoming a baker," he teased gently. Emma ducked her head, cheeks flushed. Helen said, "I'm good at using my hands." "You are," Helen said, and her voice held an affection so natural it made Liam swallow hard. Later that afternoon, Liam took Emma outside to teach her basic commands for Max. The yard behind the cabin was a clearing surrounded by tall fir trees, the ground soft with fallen needles. Max bounded through the open space with puppy enthusiasm, tripping over his own paws, rolling in the dirt, then leaping up again. "All right," Liam said, kneeling so he was eye level with Emma. "Let's teach him simple commands. Sit, stay, down. Dogs like Max love having a job. Helps them feel confident." Emma nodded. She knelt beside Max and whispered, "Sit, Max. Please." Max blinked at her. Liam chuckled. "Let's use your voice a little stronger." Emma tried again, this time firmer. Max's ears perked up. Then he sat. She gasped in delight. "He listened." "He listens because he trusts you," Liam said. "You're his safe place." Her expression softened, something deep, something healing working quietly inside her small chest. Yet healing wasn't instant. The first few nights were difficult. Emma refused to sleep unless Max was pressed tightly against her side. Every time a door closed too loudly, she would jolt upright, breath shaky, fingers clutching the blanket with white-knuckled fear. Liam and Helen learned quickly to move softly, to keep their voices gentle after dark. One night, Liam woke to muffled crying. He stepped quietly into the living room, finding Helen sitting on the couch with Emma curled against her chest. Max lay across Emma's lap, alert yet calm, as if he understood the importance of stillness. Helen rocked the trembling girl, murmuring soft assurances. The lamplight cast a halo around them. A woman who had once longed for the child she could not have, and the child who had longed for the mother she never truly knew. Helen's voice was steady. "You're safe, sweetheart. No one will hurt you here." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. "But what if they come back? What if they take Max? What if they take me?" "They won't," Helen whispered, kissing the top of her head. "Not while we breathe." The certainty in her tone made even Liam pause. Another night, when Helen bent over to tuck in the blankets, Emma hesitated before catching the woman's hand in her own. Her small fingers were cold, trembling. "Helen," she whispered, "can I ask something?" "Of course." Emma swallowed hard. "Con Antoine Roy? Jung Kong Mei?" The last word escaped her in a trembling breath. Helen froze. Her eyes widened, shimmering with tears she didn't bother to hide. She slowly sank beside Emma, gathering the girl into her arms, hugging her with the raw, unfiltered love of a woman who had spent years grieving the child she never had. "Con Antoine Roy," Helen whispered, voice breaking. "Kong Ilam Hai Kon Nua." Emma burst into sobs, loud, shaking, years of pain finally cracking open. She buried her face against Helen's chest, clutching the woman desperately. Max nudged his nose under her arm, whining softly as if adding his own reassurance. Liam stood by the doorway, unable to speak. His throat tightened until it hurt. Watching them, Helen holding Emma like a lifeline, felt like watching something sacred, something he didn't want to breathe too loudly around, afraid it might dissolve into mist. Helen lifted her gaze to Liam's. There was no fear, no hesitation, only a soft truth spoken without words. "If this is a test," her eyes said, "then she is the gift we were meant to receive." From that night on, Emma was no longer a guest. She was their child, their family, and the house that had stood silent for 10 long years finally began to feel alive again. Spring arrived gently in the mountains, carrying the scent of thawed earth and new beginnings. The Rowan cabin, once a place of silence and unspoken longing, now held the warmth of footsteps, the clatter of breakfast plates, and the soft giggles of a little girl rediscovering joy. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of paperwork, interviews, and cautious hope. Deputy Mark Jensen came by often, his calm, steady presence helping guide them through the legal maze. The final court hearing was held in the modest courthouse downtown, a squat brick building standing at the edge of town, its walls sun-bleached and slightly cracked, but dignified in its purpose. Emma clung to Helen's hand as they walked in. Max, though not allowed inside, waited faithfully with Liam outside the steps, tail thumping anxiously whenever the door opened. Inside the courtroom, Olivia looked different, far more fragile than when she had stormed the Rowan porch. Her makeup was smeared, her once carefully bleached hair dull and unwashed. She wore a wrinkled blazer that hung awkwardly on her thin frame. Cole was absent. He'd taken a plea deal for animal cruelty and assault and was being held pending trial. Olivia stood alone, shifting nervously from foot to foot, her jaw clenched with desperate defiance. Judge Marlowe, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and square spectacles, presided over the hearing. His voice was stern, but not unkind. His gaze lingered a long time on Emma's medical photographs. Bruises, malnutrition indicators, fear etched into her posture. When he spoke, his conclusion was unmistakable. Emma Carter will remain in the custody of Liam and Helen Rowan for the foreseeable future, with the strong recommendation that they be granted permanent guardianship. Helen squeezed Emma's hand. Liam's throat tightened. Olivia let out a strangled sound, half protest, half desperation, but the judge's gavel struck, final and resolute. The case was closed. When the family stepped outside, the crisp morning light felt brighter than usual. Emma spotted Liam and broke into a run. "We won!" she cried, her voice breathless and trembling with disbelief. Liam bent down just in time for Emma to leap into his arms. Max barked excitedly, hopping in circles around them. Helen emerged moments later, tears streaking her cheeks. Not of sadness, but of relief so deep it nearly hurt. Emma looked up at her, eyes sparkling. "Con, George o lai mai jung kong, eh?" Helen knelt, gathering the child into her arms with all the gentleness of a mother who had waited decades to hold a child of her own. "Jai la na con," she whispered, voice breaking. My. Max barked again, this time an unmistakable celebratory yelp. Cars passing by on the street turned briefly to witness the scene. A veteran, his wife, a little girl tightly held between them, and a young German shepherd dancing with joy at their feet. A family, built not by blood, but by love and choice. The following weeks became a quiet symphony of healing. Liam repaired the old wooden swing in the backyard, sanding it smooth and repainting it white. Emma spent entire afternoons swinging with Max lying nearby, keeping watch like a furry guardian. Helen redecorated the spare bedroom, now Emma's room, with soft yellow curtains, small fairy lights, and a quilt she sewed herself over several late nights. Max grew quickly, his legs long and clumsy, his floppy puppy ears beginning to stand tall. He followed Emma everywhere, from the chicken coop behind the cabin to the creek where she collected smooth stones. He was her shadow, her comfort, and her courage when old fears threatened to return. There were still difficult days, of course, days when nightmares woke Emma, days when sudden noises made her flinch, days when she asked if Olivia would come back. But each time, Liam sat beside her, steady and patient, and Helen wrapped her in a warm hug. She learned slowly that the world could be gentle. One quiet evening, as golden sunlight filtered through the trees, Liam sat on the porch carving a small wooden figurine, something he hadn't done in years. Emma played nearby with Max, laughter drifting through the air like music. Helen stepped out with 2 cups of tea, handing one to her husband. "You're smiling," she said softly. "Am I?" Liam asked, though he felt it, an unfamiliar but welcome ease settling in his chest. Helen leaned her head on his shoulder. "It suits you." He watched Emma spin in a slow circle, arms outstretched, sunlight catching her hair. Max bounded clumsily behind her, barking with glee. "You know," Liam murmured, "if I hadn't stopped that night, if I'd just driven past—" Helen took his hand. "You didn't. And that's what matters." He exhaled slowly. "I think she saved us as much as we saved her." Helen nodded. "Families come together in all sorts of ways." At that moment, Emma ran over, breathless. "Dad! Mom! Look!" She opened her hand to reveal a heart-shaped stone she'd found by the creek. Helen felt tears prick her eyes. Dad. Mom. The words settled over them like a blessing. Liam lifted Emma up, spinning her gently as Max barked happily around them. And in that golden, perfect second, he understood something with absolute clarity. Saving someone else had saved him too. Saving her had given him back his life. And for the first time in many years, the Rowan cabin felt whole. Sometimes the smallest moments become the greatest miracles, and the people we meet in our darkest hour are the very ones God has quietly been guiding us toward. Emma found safety, love, and a new beginning, because one man chose compassion over convenience, courage over fear. And perhaps that is how God works most often, not through thunder or fire, but through ordinary people who decide to stop, to care, to act. In our everyday lives, we may never know whose path we cross at just the right moment, or how one small act of kindness might change a destiny. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it so others may feel the same hope. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe to join us for more stories of faith, courage, and second chances. May God bless you and your loved ones, protect your home, and guide you through every storm you face.